Hello my friends, and welcome back to the Review Den. And today we are looking at the next installment of the Combat Wings series. Combat Wings Battle of Britain was the last of City Interactive's PC-exclusive flight games. In fact, the series wouldn't return until it saw a complete multi-platform style overhaul 6 years later. Think of this as the last and most polished of the original formula mouse control era. Battle of Britain would exchange the Pacific Ocean and tropical islands of earlier Combat Wings games for the misty meadows and white cliffs of southern and eastern England. But don't let those pastoral landscapes put you at ease. You're about to face the full wrath of the German Luftwaffe. It was Great Britain's Spartan moment, the last desperate defense of freedom in Europe, which until now had fallen to the tyranny of the Third Reich. In its wake, the German war machine had built or converted factories, ports, and submarine pens, and they were all pointed at one last holdout. Or more specifically, they were pointed at one military wing of that last holdout. Over the course of a year, Germany would send ever more desperate attacks across the English Channel in an attempt to break the British defenses. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of German planes would attack airstrips, factories, and eventually the civilians of London itself. And every time, they were met and repelled by the brave and stalwart Royal Air Force. It was England's finest hour, Operation Sea Lion versus the British Bulldog, and it is this series of battles that 2006's Combat Wings Battle of Britain focuses on. Like its predecessors, this is a flight combat arcade game, but it benefits from the experience City Interactive gained up to this point. Yes, these have been similar playing games, but it's nice to see how each release improved the formula. The gameplay and presentation just kept getting better, which is something even multi-million-dollar franchises seem incapable of nowadays. The smooth, mouse-based gameplay is back, but things are a bit more intuitive. You now get feedback when your shots are hitting, and there's no odd or oblique angles where your bullets won't hit. The flight model is simple, but the planes have good weight to them so they don't feel like toys. In fact, this is probably the most methodical of the Wings series, which makes sense given how early it was in the war. Personally, I actually preferred the slightly faster gameplay of 2005's Combat Wings. I think that was the best balance of speed for the series, but that's obviously personal preference. In fact, all of your planes outside the Hurricane have a speed boost now, so you can still get from point to point in a hurry if you need to. Once you get to the combat, there are no complaints. You'll take on waves of Messerschmitts, Stukas, and Heinkel bombers as you protect the British homeland. You'll deliver whole wingfuls of bullets into enemy planes, which now shear apart or turn into fiery scrap, while your own plane gets some cool new damage textures if you take some heat. You'll fly alongside friendly wingmen, which eventually you can give battlefield orders to. You get the usual commands such as attack my target, defend me, or return to formation, but they actually respond pretty well, which is nice because in these types of games that's not always the case. If you need someone to attack some bombers while you take down their escorts, you can do so, or order your wing to clear your tail if you pick up some aggro.
I need some cover here.
Understood, sir. Very beautiful kill, sir.
Secondary weapons are available but have been reworked again. Rockets are back to non-homing, in a rare point of realism, so it's pretty much guns only.
We're going out the good old-fashioned way.
Guns a-blazing.
For air-to-air. Your only concern here is keeping everything from overheating. You'll have rockets and bombs for ground attacks, but these missions are pretty rare. The game takes you through a linear 25-mission campaign, and like most games based on the Battle of Britain, you begin by patrolling British radar stations along the coast, before moving to protect inland factories and coastal shipping, and finally engaging the Hun over London itself. It's how the real battle progressed, so the games usually follow suit. To keep things fresh, you again have some turret missions, although these are more forgiving in this outing, so I won't whine about them this time. The hitboxes are actually more generous, and you won't have enemy fighters all hiding behind your tail. The real surprise here is a pair of unlockable bonus missions which you can only access by completing special objectives, such as not taking too much damage or finding hidden enemies. Thankfully, the game gives you subtle hints on how to unlock them, and you get plenty of between-mission or in-mission save slots, so you won't have to worry about missing out.
Perhaps they'd split off to distract us while the bombers make their getaway.
You're rewarded first with a set of enemy wave attacks over the English Channel, which are fun in themselves, but more importantly, you'll get access to an extra fighter for your roster, so it's worth the effort. For air power, you start with the steady and dependable Hawker Hurricane, before unlocking the nimble and iconic Supermarine Spitfire, the rare but heavily armed Westland Whirlwind, and if you're good enough, the early prototype Hawker Typhoon, which is a cool choice. Not only did it have a crazy arms load of 12 Browning machine guns, but its engine made 2,000 horsepower back when its competitors could barely manage half of that. Of course, in real life, they never really got it working until halfway through the war, but still cool stuff. Visually, this is a nice looking game. The rolling, foggy meadows look super nice and are dotted with plenty of foliage and villages. The skyboxes and clouds have a nice lush look to them, and HUD information is presented cleanly. Kinda reminds me of Secret Weapons over Normandy. The countryside just has that nice picturesque look to it. If there's one downside to the environments, it's the missions over London. Rather than a detailed 3D environment, the London Blitz missions just have you flying through a 2D skybox. I mean, I understand rendering a massive 3D city might seem daunting for developers or hardware, but this was released in the same year as Blazing Angels. If a Wii and OG Xbox game can render a city, well, it just would have been nice here. Overall though, this is still a good looking game. The planes have their best detail yet, and the view seems slightly zoomed in to show everything off. Firing guns shakes the screen, and you get that cool tunnel vision effect if you stay on the trigger. From an audio perspective, this game is a nice surprise. The guns and engines sound fine, but then again they always did, and the music non-offensively blends into the background. But the dialogue and voice work has finally moved out of that budget and shovelware range. Don't get me wrong, good gameplay is what carries a title, but having original Resident Evil level voice work does no favors to a modern game. The mission briefings are all fully voiced, I didn't notice any spelling errors, but best of all, there's now plenty of in-mission chatter. Now I know some simmers prefer nothing but military calls, but ever since Ace Combat 4, I have loved good radio chatter in flight games. It just gives a whole new level of immersion and storytelling to what otherwise could be a drab experience. No, your squadron won't be discussing the sins of war here, but a little friendly banter with your wingmen and enemies goes a long way.
Keep your eyes peeled. There's been a dozen enemy raids today already. It'll be downright embarrassing to return home without a kill.
Continue north to intercept. Today's my birthday. A victory sure would be nice.
Overall, Combat Wings Battle of Britain is a fun game, and a great way to close out the Wings series' Windows era. It shows that even budget-priced games can be fun with genuinely good gameplay. Not everything under $20 has to be edutainment or hard truck over-the-road racing. Whether you found it in a discount bin, on a parent's computer, or nowadays for a $5 on Steam, there are far worse ways for flight and action junkies to get their fix. If there's any downside, it's that it's a little anticlimactic. I realize smaller dev teams need to compromise, and facing hundreds of bombers over a fully realized London is a tall order, but other developers manage this, while here all you get is a few big dogfights before things kind of peter out. On the plus side, you now get decent voice work and a proper translation, and with a bigger or deeper campaign, this might have been a real contender. The cool news is we'll see just that in their next game, Dogfight 1942. Battle of Britain can be found on Steam, and it runs fine on Windows 10. The movies don't show, but they won't crash the game this time, and you can always view them in VLC. And there we go. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and to anyone new, would you be my next subscriber? Thanks again, I'll see you next time, and no matter what, be sure to keep going, because you are worth it.